Alrighty guys, 15,554 miles. I would say it's about time for a 15,000 mile review on the Street Bob. Alright everybody, what is up? What is up? As always, thanks for stopping by to another video today. And as you can see, we are here with my 2022 Harley Davidson Softail Street Bob. And as you guys saw in the intro there, we just hit a pretty good significant milestone with this bike. We are at 15,000 miles on this bike. Well, actually a little more. I think it's sitting at around 15,500 or so, whatever we saw there on the odometer in the intro. But as you guys know, if you've been tuning in for a while, you guys know I like to check in at some of those significant intervals, usually every 5,000 miles, 5K, 10K. We're now at 15K on the Harley Street Bob, and just give you guys a little bit of a review, a little bit of my experience of, what's been going on with the bike, what's been going on with how I've been riding it, how it's been responding to all the different ways that I've been using it, riding it, and modifying it throughout those intervals, and this one specifically for 15K. So hitting some pretty good milestones with the bikes this summer. If you guys saw the last video, that was a 20,000 mile review on my other bike, my Harley Sportster. Now we're going to take a look at the Street Bob at 15K. So if you guys have any questions or anything I miss along the way with what I'm going to talk about with the bike today, make sure you go ahead and drop it down in the comments. Let me know of any questions you have, anything I missed, anything you guys want to know, or if you just want to drop any of your specific feedback down there, feel free to let me know. I'm always curious to hear what you guys have to say out there. So as you guys probably know by now, I like to break these down into really three main categories, focusing on reliability, looks, form, and function, and then rideability as well. What all has gone into those 15,000 miles, my experience with those miles, and my experience with the bike throughout those miles and how it responds during that. So let's go ahead and get it started with reliability after 15,000 miles. And again, just a quick side note, I got that 15,000 miles in about 3 years with the bike or so. So as far as reliability, guys, this might be a short one for me. I have really had no problems, knock on wood, if there's any around, pile of wood over there. Really no issues with the bike so far at this point. 3 years, 15,000 miles. Hopefully it stays that way. I don't want to jinx myself. Now, I did have one issue where we blew a fuse on the bike and it wouldn't start one time, but it really just took me a little bit of time to troubleshoot that, pop a new fuse back in there. Never happened since, only happened one time. Not sure what was going on with that. I wouldn't even really call that a huge reliability issue or anything like that. Just popped the new fuse in and got it all fixed up. Other than that, no issues that I can report back on this bike at this time. So let me know if you guys have had any different experiences. Again, reliability, short topic for me on this one. Let me know if you guys have any different experiences, anything that's gone wrong with the bike, any defects, issues, problems that you guys have had with your Softail Street Bobs, engine related, anything like that. One thing that I have heard on some of the forums and things like that, I've heard people having issues with the fork seals. I've heard that this year range, kind of like the early 20s, had a problem with blowing fork seals pretty commonly. Luckily, again, knock on wood, I have not had that issue to this point. So I hear a lot of other people say things about, like transmissions and the engine, the M8 and things like that being junk, or they've had things crap out on them. All I can really report back is my experience. I have not had any of that to date, but if you have, please go ahead and drop it down in the comments. I'd be curious to hear that. I'm sure other people would be curious to know as well. Certain things to look out for. Like I said, really no issues that I can report back. I keep up with all the 5K service intervals. We just did some oil and fresh fluids. Recently put new tires front and back. Really just trying to keep up with all the normal traditional maintenance, keep the bike in tip-top shape, and it has been very reliable for me to this point. Luckily, no issues to report back from a reliability standpoint. Next up, if we think about the bike from our next category, looks, form, and function, in its truest essence, the bike, the Street Bob, is really just a stripped down, minimalistic style cruiser. So if we think about reviewing that in its stock form, I'll go through some of what I've done that has been changes over stock and tell you why, and I think that'll give you maybe a little perspective or perception on kind of a review of the stock setup and different ways that you can kind of change it to fit your preference if you don't like some of the stock stuff. So obviously this bike comes stock naked up front. You're going to have no wind protection when you get this thing stock. That's why I went ahead and put a Memphis Shades windscreen on there. Some other little keys here. A lot of people complain about the bars. After 3 years, I finally changed those out. Remember, stock, this is going to come with the 12-inch mini apes. I really did not mind those. I was just looking for something just a tad lower and bring my hands in a little bit. This thrashing setup really accomplishes that. Another thing to really consider as far as function of the bike, you've got a 3.5 gallon gas tank here. Some people complain about that depending on the style riding you do. I get around 150, 170 miles per tank, so it really kind of is fine for me. Of course, we've got the Milwaukee 8 engine right here. Really good, huge, strong power plant. I'm super happy with it considering the size of the bike. Again, the Street Bob going to be very stripped down, aftermarket bags here. You're not going to have any luggage or any storage when you get this bike stock, so that is always something to consider as well. If you're going to do any traveling, you're probably going to have to add some bags and luggage to carry some of your stuff. Just some other simple tidbits about looks, form, and function. Again, probably the smallest softail I think you can get right now is the Street Bob, coming in at around like 640 pounds. So this is really kind of your smallest softail cruiser from Harley at this point in time. Again, reviewing this from a stock perspective, you really have to understand that it's going to be a very minimalistic, stripped down bobber style cruiser. All of this stuff that I have added to it and upgraded has been to fit more of my riding style. So if your style is going to be very simple riding, you may not have to add a whole lot of this aftermarket stuff to your bike. It may be good for you just in that stock setup. But luckily, the Softail Street Bob is probably one of the most customizable Softails out there that you can get right now to really turn it in to exactly what you want. Turn this bike into the exact style of cruiser that you want for yourself. And of course, before we hop on the bike and talk about the rideability of the bike, of course, we got to complain about the stock seat. Of course, you can see here, I've got the San Diego Custom Saddleman step-up seat. And then I also, for some of my longer trips, have thrown a soft honeycomb gel pad on here for some extra comfort. This actually looks like the shape of the stock seat, but if you guys are familiar with these stock seats, they're terrible. A lot of people don't use them. Very uncomfortable for any longer type of riding. That's another thing to consider, is you're probably going to be swapping out the stock seat when you think about this bike. So that's everything with the Street Bob from a reliability perspective and a looks, form, and function from the stock perspective. Let's go ahead, hop on the bike. I'm going to talk about all the different riding I have done with the bike and then my experience through these 15,000 miles actually riding it. Alrighty, so on the bike now, thinking a little bit about reviewing the experience of riding this bike for 15,000 miles. Let's start off with where I live. As you guys know, I live in the city of Philadelphia. Now, city riding on any bike is not my favorite thing in the world. But when we think about this bike and riding around the city, you know, very condensed, very populated, very much metro craziness in the area of Philadelphia. Again, not my favorite type of riding, but this bike really does kind of handle it just fine, because if you think about kind of the size of the bike, it does have a very slim profile, maneuverability, get in and out of kind of some of those city stop and go situations if you need to. And then the power with the 114, really super quick and snappy, gets you in and out of traffic, duck, dodge, dive, anything you really need to do to keep yourself safe while you're riding through the city area. But again, at the same time, all that power, you want to kind of get out and use it. You don't want to be sitting in stop and go traffic in the city. So just a couple of things to consider. Not my favorite place to ride it, but it really can excel through the city if you need to, if you're commuting, if you're getting groceries, running errands, all that type of thing. It really will handle all of those really well if that's what you need to do and if that's what you have the bike for. Next up, the place I would say this bike really excels is like a long day trip or like a long weekend trip where you're covering maybe anywhere from like 350 to 500 miles. This bike really will give you a great experience and opportunity to do that, because you're big enough and powerful enough to be out there crushing miles on the highway. You're powerful enough and agile enough to be out in the back roads. So it really hits all of those really well from a power and maneuverability perspective. You can really crush a lot of good miles in one day before you start to realize some of the limitations of the bike, as far as like the gas tank, for example, some of like the mileage range of how far you can go on a tank, and then some of the comfortable aspects of the bike as well. You can get a pretty good clip in before you start to get uncomfortable and need to hop off this thing, which kind of leads me to my next point of that longer distance type riding. So some of the stuff I mentioned just real quick before, some of those other things, like, you know, you're going to want to take into consideration the tank, 3.5 gallons of gas. You're going to want to take into consideration maybe like your wind protection or some of your luggage and stuff. If you're thinking about this bike on some of those really long trips, multiple days, week long, 2 weeks, thousands of miles, those type of things. Because in my experience, wind and comfort can definitely kind of get to you after a little while. That's, like I said, you know, you're going to upgrade that seat most likely. I threw an extra pad on there. I threw the Memphis shades for some of that wind protection when I'm traveling long on some of those like longer highway stretches. I threw the bags on there because I need some of that storage for some of the longer stuff. But in the end, the bike really will do anything you want it to. It's powerful enough, it's big enough, heavy enough on the highway to keep you planted. When you're hitting some of those long highway stretches, yeah, maybe some of the comfort and wind will get to you after a while, but the bike is probably going to hold up longer and better than you do. So the bike is going to do anything you want it to, in my opinion, when you think about reviewing this after all those different types of riding. So don't think you have to limit yourself to any type of riding that you're going to do with this bike when you're planning some of those longer road trips. It's going to hit all of it just the way you want it to. It's just some of those minor little things that you're going to want to consider in setting this bike up for you and yourself to really excel through any of those. Also, if you're a bigger person with some of those longer legs, bigger stature, you're probably going to want to throw some forward controls on this bike, maybe stretch your feet out a little bit, or a crash bar that you can help stretch your feet out, because some people do say that they start to get a little cramped on this bike. I'm only 5'6", and I would say after like 120 miles, my hips, knees are starting to, you know, just tighten up a little bit. Like, okay, I'm ready to hop off of this. If you're even taller, I would imagine that might set in even sooner for you. The way that I set up some of my longer trips on this bike, I will usually hit a clip of anywhere from like 100 to 130 miles, and then I can kind of feel myself like I'm a little beat up from the wind, a little beat up from the riding position. I gotta hop off, take 10-15 minutes, hop back on. But I do think we'll go ahead and start to wrap this one up. Just to recap from some of those categories: reliability, totally fine. I've never had any issues with anything mechanical related. I just had a blown fuse one time, fixed it, never happened again. Don't see that as an issue. Looks, form, and function, again, minimalistic, stripped down bobber cruiser style motorcycle in its stock form that gives you the opportunity to really turn it in to whatever's going to fit your need best. And then rideability, again, around town, really fine, not my favorite. Quick, nimble, agile, powerful enough to duck, dodge, dive in between traffic. Really think this bike excels at some of the like day trips, 350, 500 miles in a day, but you can also crank out some of those long hauls as well and be pretty comfortable with some of those things to consider, like I mentioned previously. So if you guys have any questions about the Harley Davidson Softail Street Bob or anything I missed about this bike, go ahead and drop it down in the comments. That is going to go ahead and wrap this one up as we finish this cruise back into the city of Philadelphia. As always, make sure you ride safe out there, guys. Make it a good one. It's the Moto John. We'll see you all on down the road. Peace.